What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're going to discuss the best decks in standard format as of July 2021 in the Team Up through Chilling Reign standard format of the Pokemon trading card game. I will be including lists as well, and I'll have some links in the description down below where you can find all of my lists, not only for the decks shown in here, but for a bunch of other standard format decks as well. And before we hop into this video, be sure if you like this video and some of my other content you've checked out to subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content, and leave a like and a comment to help boost the video and help more people see it. I really appreciate all of that. A quick shout out to my sponsors, Pokemoncard.jo, the best place for you to get ptcgo codes, and be sure to use code CELIO for 5% off over there. You can check out all of my decks, like I mentioned, at Pokemoncard.jo, and you can also make an account and share your own decks on there, so be sure to check out that link in the description. Also, I wanted to mention I have a Patreon account where you can support me monthly for perks like premium article posts, messaging, and also suggesting content for me to create. In this video, we'll be talking about the top 7 decks in the Team Up through Chilling Reign standard format based on results, estimated matchup spreads, and my personal opinion, because you can go find a lot of best deck videos, and really the content creators you choose are probably because you want to hear their personal opinion. So this is not completely data driven, although it is influenced by data and actual results. And of course, none of this would be possible without play.limitlesstcg.com, the best place to run tournaments and find tournaments to play in, and also to look at tournament results, and also trainerhill.com, which is a very valuable resource for tournament data, player data, and matchup spreads, deck lists, and things like that. So let's get into the top 7 decks in the standard format according to me, and the number 7 is fairly arbitrary. I thought these top 7 were the most important ones, and there's a noticeable gap, in my opinion, after number 7. So these were the ones I thought you need to know about because these are the best decks in standard. Starting with number 7, we have Decidueye Inteleon. So Decidueye is a strong card, and it's been a strong card since it came out in Darkness Ablaze, since it cannot be damaged by V Pokemon, V and GX Pokemon, which also includes V Max Pokemon. So it's essentially a wall type Pokemon that also attacks for a considerable amount of damage every turn and just chips away at your opponent. And the Drizzle Inteleon engine has added a lot to this deck. Drizzle adds consistency because you can search for exactly what you want, and Inteleon from Chilling Reign's quick shooting ability allows you to take knockouts faster, so that if your opponent's deck does have a chance against you, you put them on a much faster clock due to quick shooting. This is the list which I think is the best, so I included my list here for Decidueye Inteleon because I think this handles the metagame and some counters to Decidueye Inteleon the best. I think the 2 Malolana is something that's very important because decks will have single prize attackers that can attack into Decidueye, and sometimes they'll be prepared for you hitting a single Malolana, but a lot of times 2 Malolana really does them in, and it's too much for them to handle. We also have the big Parasol. We have 2 of those to stop Astral Barrage and other things like that. Astral Barrage being CALYREX V's second attack that can place damage counters on your Pokemon. And also Tool Scrapper to get rid of Tool Jammer that will stop our big Parasol, and also to get rid of Stealthy Hood, which prevents quick shooting from placing damage counters. Number 6 is Eternatus VMAX with Galarian Moltres V. Now, there are 2 variants pretty much to this in standard format. You can either play Weavile GX or you can play Energy Switches. I've talked about the Energy Switch variant, and I feel like that variant has been talked into the ground. I do consider both of the variants to be here at number 6. But today we'll look at a Weavile GX list. But just real quick, Eternatus VMAX, it's hard for this card to not be good. It can do 270 damage for 2 energy, but but in the current metagame, you don't have to be hitting 270 on turn 2 a lot of the times because there's a lot of VMAX Pokemon being played. It's not a lot of tag teams like it once was. There still are tag teams, don't get me wrong, but it's not tag team driven with Reshizard and Pikarom and ADP and LUCMETAL being, and Mewtwo and Mew even being the very best decks in the format. Those decks are still around, but there are more VMAXs now. So that turn 2 270 that players see as kind of the benchmark for Eternatus kind of isn't it anymore, in my opinion, because you can just two-shot VMAXs, and that's fine, and you don't need to do 270 to do that. Galarian Moltres V helps you if you whiff an energy or your opponent removes an energy, or even if you want to switch to a clean Eternatus with no damage on it. Galarian Moltres plus either Energy Switch or Weavile GX helps you make a new Eternatus or replenish an Eternatus that had its energies removed. Eternatus is also just very good because Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX is very good, and that is weak to dark. So here's the list we'll look at today for Eternatus VMAX, and this is by GABRIELSMART. This is, like I said, the Weavile GX variant, so it's playing a heavy count of 3 Chaotic Swell to make sure Path to the Peak stays out of the game so that you can use Weavile GX's Shadow Connection to move dark energy around the board, notably from Galarian Moltres V after it uses the Dire Flame Wings ability, and on to Eternatus VMAX. Gabriel included Darkrai, which is an attacker that I have not seen before in an Eternatus deck, and this is to be able to hit things like Decidueye that can't be hit by Vs and GXs, and Zamazenta that can't be hit by VMAX. So also note that there's 2 Phoebes in here, so even if you're not using that Darkrai for a prize trade swing or to hit into wall type Pokemon, the Phoebes can allow your Eternatus VMAXs to go through Decidueye or Zamazenta, or Altaria for that matter. At number 5, we have Urshifu Inteleon. And I don't want you to mistake this for me saying Urshifu Inteleon is not a very good deck, because it is. Number 5 is nothing to scoff at. I do think this deck is great. I enjoy playing it personally. I do think it's missing just a tiny boost that it will receive in Evolving Skies from Medicham V, and possibly from the supporter Raihan. But it is still great. It just has some noticeable weaknesses right now going on in the standard format, which are LUCMETAL ZACIAN and Shadow Rider Calyrex, both resisting and hitting this for weakness, which definitely proves to be an issue for Rapid Strike Urshifu. The new Inteleon does add quite a bit for Urshifu because quick shooting really helps Urshifu, which often will miss a knockout by like a couple damage counters, whether that be something in the active that you hit twice with Gale Thrust, or things that you're hitting on the bench with Gmax Rapid Flow plus a Telescopic Sight or plus the Passimian Rapid Strike. So Rapid Strike Urshifu in theory got better with Inteleon, but worse because of the matchups going on in the current standard. So here is my current list for Urshifu Inteleon. I do not think it has anything that special going on. I just didn't find any recent high-performing Urshifu Inteleon lists that I completely agreed with, so I figured I would show my list instead. And like I said, you can find all of my lists over at Pokemoncard.jo. Link is in the description down below. This is using a Hoopa with Evil Admonition because it's a really, really efficient 1-energy attacker against Calyrex, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, which is weak to dark. So you can get a nice hit in on that and try to set up knockouts with the help of Passimian Telescopic Sight, Gmax Rapid Flow, and then also quick shooting to help some numbers. And you can get some 5, even 6 prize turns set up if you draw the right cards, play the right strategy, and get a little lucky along the way to set up really incredible knockouts and prize mapping against Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. It is a winnable matchup. It's just one of the worst matchups for Urshifu VMAX, but Urshifu does have good matchups as well with the help of Inteleon. Inteleon's also a Rapid Strike Pokemon that can attack for a single Rapid Strike energy, so that really helps against Decidueye. You can also help a little against Zamazenta, but Zamazenta does have, you know, toughness capes and metal goggles and full metal wall, so that matchup is still pretty hard. Eternatus is a good matchup because of type advantage, and this is also typically good against ADP decks because you don't necessarily have to put down easy targets for ADP, and most ADP decks are not playing a psychic attacker to counter URSHIFU since they're more focused on countering the other top decks in the standard format. So URSHIFU, INTELEON, a great deck, just not at the very, very top right now, in my opinion. Next at number 4 is LUCMETAL ZACIAN, and this is one that I got wrong going into the Chilling Reign metagame. I did not think this would stay at the top, but it has pretty steadily stayed up there. Zamazenta resisting all damage from VMAX Pokemon, even with Path to the Peak in the metagame, is still working. Zacian V is an incredibly efficient Pokemon, both for its ability and its attack, hitting Ice Rider CALYREX VMAX, one of the best new cards for weakness. And Lucario Melmetal, of course, removing energy. Some players are maybe not preparing for energy removal as much now that Crushing Hammer has miraculously fallen out of the metagame. So Full Metal Wall can also be a bit disruptive at some points, depending on the deck you're playing, but at the very least, it resists 30 damage for all of your metal Pokemon, which is great. The list we'll look at here is Joshua Sutherland's, and I believe he's basically played LUCMETAL ZACIAN ever since the deck was a deck. So I do typically tend to look at Joshua's lists for LUCMETAL ZACIAN, since he just plays it so much, and I feel like he gets at least decent performances at most events that he plays it in. The deck really focuses on tanking with Goggles and Cape of Toughness, and then healing bits of damage with Malolana, which this is one of the only decks where Malolana will consistently heal enough damage to matter in this current standard format because of the damage reduction helped by Full Metal Wall GX and Metal Goggles, reducing a total of 60 damage from attacks, and then Malolana healing 120. That's often enough to matter, whereas in most decks, healing 120 is not going to stop you from getting knocked out on the following turn. Here, a lot of times it can. So you have the consistency of Zacian or with Intrepid Sword and Energy Acceleration, and then of course Brave Blade is such an efficient attack, doing 230 for 3, and like I said, that's hitting Ice Rider Cali for weakness, which is nice because Ice Rider's a great deck. Zamazenta V, its Dauntless Shield ability stops it from being damaged by any VMAX Pokemon, and most of the top of the metagame is VMAX. We've got both CALYREX's, Eternatus VMAX, URSHIFU VMAX, a lot of important VMAXs that Zamazenta cannot be hit by, of course, unless they play Phoebe or Path to the Peak. And then LUCMETAL GX just wraps a bow on the deck because it gives you an extra minus 30 from incoming attacks for the rest of the game. At number 3, we have ADPZ with birds, being Galarian Moltres V and Galarian Zapdos V. I do want to make a strong note here. I don't think that the lists without Zacian V are good. I do think you need to have Zacian V in some sort of capacity. But mixing it all together with the new Galarian birds, Moltres and Zapdos, give you just incredible type coverage. So let's get into the list here by DIAMONDKING, who won a recent Chill TCG tournament. I also put their name from their own language here, but I do not know what it is, but I thought I would put their real name there. And then their Twitter tag, of course, Diamond_King. So this brings together just it just gives you a way to beat just about everything other than URSHIFU, which you can just try to beat naturally without an edge. But Galarian Moltres, you don't even need to alter creation versus Shadow Rider CALYREX because you can just knock out 2 Shadow Rider VMAXs with Galarian Moltres, which is incredible. ADP, of course, to help you against anything that you do need to take extra prizes against. You alter creation and boom, you're doing more damage and you're taking an extra prize for each knockout, so you can still play the classic boss to Dene, boss back game and win that way. Zacian is one-shotting every V Pokemon, and it's also one-shotting Ice Rider CALYREX VMAX. And then Galarian Zapdos, for just an Aurora energy, typically will be one-shotting Eternatus VMAX, which is great. Mawile GX is annoying, and it can also be an attacker on its own. And then Aegislash V hits through Decidueye's ability. And after Alter Creation, Aegis V actually one-shots Decidueye, and it also takes an extra prize card for doing so. So this is just a deck that pretty much counters most stuff that's at the top of the metagame right now. And because of that, it might have some consistency issues along the way. You know, it can only play 2 Zacian, it can only play 1 Crobat, it doesn't get to play Marnies, because you need to fit in the other stuff that's important, like the spread of energies, the Viridian Forest to get energy into the discard pile, the basic ADP stuff like the 2 ADP and the 4 research and the 4 boss. So it might not be the most consistent deck in standard format, but I do think it covers the most ground and gives you the best chance to beat a field of anything that you might see in current standard. Next at number 2, we have Ice Rider CALYREX VMAX, notably the variant with INTELEON. Now, some decks will play the Chilling Reign INTELEON with quick shooting, which you see on the screen, and others only stick to the Sword and Shield INTELEON with Shading Dealings, which searches for 2 trainers. Now, Ice Rider CALYREX VMAX swings for a max of 250 for just 2 energy. Pretty similar to Eternus VMAX, except it's not hindered by Path to the Peak, so it can play its own Path to the Peak, although it does need to play Melanie to accelerate energy on a fair amount of its turns. So here's the list that we'll look at for today, and this list is by TATEWHITESELL. He also wrote an article on this deck on flipsidegaming.com, and that is free to read, so be sure to go check that out if you're interested in more Ice Rider information. But this is his list, and mine's not too far off from it. I do still play a Dedenne just to have a little bit of burst draw, and I'm not sure that 4 Path to the Peaks are needed in this current format. I think 3 is just fine. But you'll see here that Tate sticks to just playing 3 Shady Dealing INTELEON and none of the Chilling Reign INTELEON. Now, the Chilling Reign INTELEON helps in some niche scenarios. It helps against tag teams sometimes to reach the knockout, since Max Lance only does 250. And an ADP won't be knocked out by that, so a couple Chilling Reign INTELEON pings later on, it will be knocked out. And it also helps against Decidueye, doing a little extra damage and then knocking it out with Aqua Bullet from the Sword and Shield INTELEON. But the reasoning behind playing just the Sword and Shield INTELEON is to have max consistency and just run your opponent down, swinging for 250 every turn, or bossing something up on the turns where you don't need to Melanie. The final deck here is Shadow Rider CALYREX VMAX, the best card from Chilling Reign, and currently the best deck in standard format, in my opinion. I recently wrote an article about this and what I think the other best decks in standard format are over on my patreon.com/Celios Network, which you can support me monthly to get access to all of that. But my lists are always free on Pokemoncard.jo, so definitely go check those out for free, regardless if you're a patron or not. But I did say that I think Shadow Rider CALYREX VMAX with a 1/1 Alchemy was the best, and I'm also working on another article for the second half of July, further analyzing Shadow Rider, the Alchemy lines, and some of the other top decks in the format. Today's list that I chose to look at is ISAIAHBRADNER's with a 1/1 Alchemy line, which I do think is the way to go. I've been trying to decide if somewhere between 1/1 and a 2/2 line of Alchemy VMAX is correct, and currently I'm at the spot where I think 1/1 typically will get the job done, but I also don't fault anyone for playing a 2/1 or a 2/2 line, much like we saw in the first place list from the Japan Championships 2021. What I like about Isaiah's list is that I think it tends to the meta trend a bit by playing 2 Chaotic Swell and just 1 Marshadow, whereas I was playing 2 Marshadow for a bit. But the second Chaotic Swell not only helps against Path to the Peak, which I was fine with just getting rid of the Path to the Peak with Marshadow. The Chaotic Swell helps against Viridian Forest, which is an integral piece to the ADPZ MOLTRES decks, because you need the Viridian Forest a lot of times to get the dark energy into the discard pile and get that accelerating. So I think the Chaotic Swell is a great choice, playing it at a 2 count, not only for Path of the Peak, which of course it helps against, but also for Viridian Forest, because ADP birds can be a very tough matchup for this deck. The other notable thing here is that Isaiah chooses to play 2 Gengar Mimikyu as opposed to 1 Gengar and 1 Trevenant Dusknoir. I do think Trevenant Dusknoir is a great card. You can't deny that Night Watch after a Marnie, or even Pale Moon after a Marnie, is very, very strong. But I definitely identify the value of consistently having Gengar Mimikyu when you want to use Horror House, exactly when you want to use it, because whether it's in the early, mid, or late game, just essentially stopping your opponent for a turn sometimes can be the difference between winning or losing with Horror House GX. So I definitely do like the 2 Gengar Mimikyu in there, and all it really stops you from doing, taking out the Trevenant Dusknoir, is it's going to stop you from cheesing games with Marnie Night Watch or with Marnie Pale Moon. But I do think in a lot of scenarios you can get those wins in a similar way with a Horror House if you really work for it and know when to use that GX attack. So I think this list is really, really good. Somewhere between this, my most recent list, and the Japan first place list is probably the way to go. But definitely work on it your own, and that goes for all of these lists. I don't think any of these lists are really set in stone. If there's something you want to try out, feel free to. We're in a really interesting era of the game where this format doesn't matter too much, and everything's online still. Like, there's no official events in real life, so you know, we're playing for fun, we're playing for pride. So do whatever you think is best for the decks. This is just kind of a guideline for all of it. And these are the 7 decks that I featured today in the video. From 1st to 7th, we've got Shadow Cali, Ice Cali, ADP Birds, LUCMETAL, URSHIFU, INTELEON, ETERNATUS, and DECIDUEYE INTELEON. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. Leave a like and a comment, and check out the links below that I mentioned, like PokeTownStore.com, Pokemoncard.jo, my Patreon, and also join my Discord if you haven't already, to join in on the community that's forming over there. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.